Hello, so we're just going to focus on some percent problems in this video, and there's going to be a variety of different sorts of problems that deal with percentages. And perhaps one of the easiest kind of percent problems is the one before us, like what is 15% of 350? And finding the percent of any given number is actually fairly easy. There's two ways to think about it that come readily to my mind, more than two ways to do it, of course, but one way is to set up a proportion. So I know that 15% is 15 hundredths, or 15 out of 100. But I need to know what number is that going to be out of 350. So I'll write 350 in my denominator and put some sort of variable like x in the numerator, because I know 15 out of 100, I want to know what that is and how that compares to something else out of 350. And I need to find that something else. So in this method, we can solve the proportion. And if you haven't learned about cross multiplication and why that works, this would be a good time to go research that, because it's not just a trick. There's a cool reason why it works. It's just the algebra behind it that you should consider. So this is going to be 100x, 100 times x, equals 350 times 15. Oops, let me write that correctly here. And I need to figure out what that is. So 15 times 350, I'll do that real quick. 17,053. So 5,250, but 100x equals that. So I'm going to have to divide, let me move this up a bit. I'm going to have to divide this by 100. Divide both sides by 100 to solve for x, right? And pretty easy to do that, to divide by 100, because the decimal point, which is currently right here, is just really going to move left twice. So this is going to be 52.5. So 52.5 is 15% of 350. Before I'm done, though, I want to make sure that makes sense. Well, 52.5 would be 52.5% of 100, but I am making that 100 350, so it makes sense that 52.5 would only be 15% of something larger than 100. So my answer is reasonable. The other method for doing problems like this, which I think is even easier, is to just simply convert. When I say the other, I don't mean the only other, but another. Simply convert this into 15 hundredths as so, doing that, writing it as a decimal, and then multiplying that by 350. And if you do that, you should come directly out with the correct answer. So we get 0, 25, 17, then 0, 5, and 3. And you can probably see this already. And we get 5250, but because I was multiplying by 15 hundredths and not 15, I know this is 52.5. So it comes out right either way. Let's look at some other sort of percent problems, some other kind of percent problems. So what if we want to know how two numbers relate percentage-wise in another way? So for example, what if we wanted to know what percentage, say, 15 is of, I don't know, let's go with 65. So what percent is 15 of 65? That might be an important question someday for you. Not really, actually. Probably not in this context, but I can think of a lot of reasons in the real world you might want to know what percent of another number a given number is. So 15 is what percent of 65? And these are actually pretty easy problems to do, because you really just need to convert these into decimals. Because 15 of 65, so if you've got 65 total pieces available, but you've only got 15 of them. And what I mean by that is, if there's 65 possibilities, and you're only looking at 15 of those possibilities, you've got 15 out of 65. Now, something that I think would be important to remember is to remember that 65 out of 65 is 1 or 100%. So that means there's 100% of the number there. 65 is 100% of itself. And on this other end, 0 of 65 is actually 0%. There's nothing of 65. And we're asking, what percent is 15 of 65? So we know it's got to be obviously between 0 and 100. And it's probably going to be closer to the 0 than it is to the 100 because 15 is closer to 0 than it is to 65. So this is just giving me a sense of what my answer should look like. And so one way to do it is to just divide this out. So what is 15? And I'm going to need more room here, so I'm actually going to shrink some stuff. So what is 15 divided by 65? That would be a question. Or not a question, but that would be one method to solve this. And obviously I can't just do the division straight away, so I have to, do this, add the decimal point, add a 0. And 65 goes into 150 twice, right? And 2 times 65 is 130. Now I've got 20 left over, bring down another 0, and I'm converting this now into a decimal. So how many times does 65 go into 200 is the new question. I'm going to guess 3 times, because I know 3 times 60 is 180. So 3 times 65, well, I know 3 times 5 is going to be 15, and 3 times 60 is 180. So it should come out to 195. Let me check it. And sure enough, it does. Oh, I did that wrong. Let's see if I can do this correctly. So 3 times 5 is 15, 3 times 6 is 18, plus 1 is 19. So 195. And so we have a 5 left over, bring down another 0. And 65 doesn't go into 50 any times. So it goes in there 0 times. Bring down another 0. And I could keep going and doing this for a long time. But I realize now that I have enough information to round this to the nearest percent, which is good enough for me for this situation. So the question is, what is 0.23 in percentage? Well, that's 23 hundredths. That's exactly the same thing as 23 over 100. So I know that's going to be the same thing as 23%. To summarize then, to actually answer the question, I would say that 15 is about 23% of 65. And I just used division to help me figure that out. And the reason I'm saying about is because it's not exact. I rounded. I kind of quit the division problem because it could have gone on for a long time. I don't know. And I guess it would be, I could plug into the calculator, find out, or just keep doing it by hand. But I felt like the nearest percent was good enough for this situation. What happens in situations like this? Well, this asks us 25% of what number is 85. So in this case, we are actually missing the big number. So this big number, or the what number, only 25% of that is 85. So it'd be really easy to solve this if we just took 85, multiplied it by 4. Because whatever 85 times 4 is, a quarter of it is 85. That makes a lot of sense, right? If you multiply 85 by 4, 1/4 of that would be 85. So this tells us 25% of this larger number is 85. I want to show you how to solve it if the numbers weren't quite so easy. So what if this was like 23% or 21% rather than 25? Well, one way you could do this is you could say, well, I know to find the percent of a number, I can just change the percentage into a decimal and multiply it by the number. So in this case, I'm going to use an x to represent this unknown big number. And I know that 25% or 25 hundredths times this big number x results in 85. So I've actually written an equation here. Now I just need to solve for x because x is that big number. So again, I want to reiterate how I thought this through. I know that multiplying a decimal equivalent of my percentage by the large number will get me what that percent is supposed to be of that larger number. So if I already knew x, let's pretend x was 400, which it's not. But if I wanted to know what 25% of 400 was, I could just go 0.25 times 100. Or we could do it in our mind, right? Because taking a quarter of something is pretty easy. We just divide that thing by 4. And that's exactly what's going to happen here. We're going to end up dividing both sides of this equation by 0.25. And a minute ago I said we just divide that thing by 4. Well, the reason we're not dividing that thing by 4 here is because we have the smaller piece. This right here is the small piece, not the big piece. We're trying to find the big piece. So we're actually dividing this by 1/4, or 0.25. Because if you divide a small number by a number between 0 and 1, you're going to get a bigger number. So let's do the division. 85 divided by 0.25. Well, I know I need to make this 25, right? Let me get me some work room here. So I'm going to move the decimal point over twice in both numbers. So I'm going to get 25 into, let's see, 8,500. Yep, got that right, I think. So 25 goes into 85 3 times, got a 75, 10 left over, bringing down the 0, got a 4, nothing left over, bring down the 0, it goes in 0 times. And so this would seem to indicate that 340 would be the exact answer, right? Because there's no remainder. But I kind of want to check it. So what is 25% of 340? Well, one way to think about that is, what is 340 cut in 4 pieces? Well, it's probably going to be 85, because I know 34 cut in 4 pieces is 8.5. But let's check it this way. I know 5 times 0 is 0. 5 times 4 is 20. And so I'm going to continue doing this now, just to check it. And I actually get 85. So I just checked it. So the number must be 340. 25% of 340 is 85. And the equation I set up is just one way to do it. You could have easily set up a proportion to solve that problem. So here's just a silly scenario, right, that kids come across in their homework in school, right? So here's a scenario. I love to collect tools. This is true, by the way. If I have a total of 56 tools and 20 of them are power tools, what percent of my tools are hand tools? So imagine my garage. It's full of tools. I've got saws, I've got hammers, I've got screwdrivers, I've got wrenches. Some of those things plug in. Some of those are battery operated. Those are my power tools. Some of those are not operated by power. Those are my hand tools. So the hand saw is the thing you have to move with your hand. There's no motor that turns it for you. And so if I know I have a total of 56 and 20 of them are power, I'm going to subtract that to figure out the number of hand tools that I have. So these are my power tools. These are my total tools. So I'm going to have 36 hand tools, right? But it actually asks for a percentage. So now I need to know, okay, if I have 36 hand tools, what percent of 56 is that? So that's what I'm going to figure out. So I'm going to get myself some work room here. What percent of 56 is 36? So again, I could go 36 over 56 and just divide it out to get an answer. I could also set up a proportion. So I want to know what percent. So x over 100, what percent is 36 over 56? And these are basically exactly the same thing. In this particular case, I would just go 36 divided by 56, get some number here, some decimal. Over here, if I cross multiplied, I get 56x equals 3,600. So again, I'm dividing 3,600 by 56. Over here, I know I'm going to get a decimal that I'm going to have to convert to a percentage. This one, I'm going to get my percentage right away. Now, I'm actually not going to take the time to do this. Just wanted to reiterate how you might go about answering a question like that. You could simply set it up as a fraction divide, get a decimal convert. So I would need to convert 2%. Or just set up a proportion and you'll get a percentage right away. Thanks for watching, and I hope this was helpful if you needed it. Again, this has been a review of percents, not meant for like a first-time lesson or anything like that. This is just a brief review for those of you who are studying for the final. Thank you.